So, so we're going to go ahead and start with Bill down there.
I'm Del Sarkenberg, and I'm from Milwaukee, Oregon, which is in Clackamas County, and been an OBPAC member for almost a year now.
Hi, I'm Nolan Poole. I think I'm the newest OBPAC member, and I live part-time in Eugene, part-time in Portland.
I'm Dave Thompson. I'm from Bend, and I'm the, I think, first ex officio member of OBPAC, so don't vote, but I make myself known. I'm also the chair of the Deschutes County BPAC.
Beth Young, co-chair from Newport, Oregon.
Leanne Ferguson, I'm the Strategic Investment Manager at ODOT in the Public Transportation Division, and I get to be the staff person to help support OBPAC.
Andre Lightsey Walker, at-large member, based out of Portland, Oregon.
Amanda Howell. I'm the Innovative Mobility Program Manager for ODOT.
My name is Mark Gibson. I'm officially the Government Relations Policy Advisor for the Oregon and Trucking Associations, but I own a couple of businesses and I live in Ashland, Oregon.
I'm Walt Gamble, and I represent the Associated General Contractors of America. I was a contractor, and I'm proud to say I am a hardcore biker. I'm still riding my 60s Moto-Beacon with 10 speeds.
And folks who are joining us virtually may not be able to see me. I'm Roberto Cotto. I'm the Active Transportation Program Analyst. Thank you for joining us virtually. Just a friendly reminder to folks, please go ahead and mute yourself. We'll have a couple of minutes for public comments. At that point, you can raise your hand or let me know in the chat room that you are interested in providing public comment. We also ask if folks begin to have any bandwidth issues, please feel free to turn off your cameras as well. That may help out with the bandwidth. I see that Stephanie Zellner is also. Stephanie, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Zellner, and I am the Policy and Strategic Investment Manager and the Transit Operations Manager at Public Transportation. And I apologize for not being in person. I'm a little under the weather today, so I did not want to share any of that with you. But thank you for having me this afternoon. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other ODOT staff that wish to introduce yourself, please add your name and position in the chat room. And I'll hand it over to our co-chairs.
Okay, wonderful. Our meeting goals for today are, of course, we're going to approve the minutes and a few other, we have a variety of things to speak over, but we also, one of our big things is that we are going to do our work program update because we need to figure out, we have a lot of new members and we want to feel like we're being effective. So that is one of our 5 parts today. And then we have a fancy little slide for our meeting etiquette, do we not?
Let me go ahead and put that up. And I can cover that portion.
Maybe we'll have a meeting etiquette.
Okay, so for the folks who are joining us online, just a reminder that when you're doing public comment, these meetings are being recorded as part of the Oregon public laws. So when you're addressing the committee, just be as courteous as possible. If this is your first time utilizing the Zoom meeting, please go ahead and mute yourself. And then also public comments are 1 to 3 minutes. I'll go ahead and monitor that for folks and let you know via chat room when your 3 minutes are up.
Excellent. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and move on to public comment with Beth Young leading the way.
Okay, I'll just read this here. Public comments may be submitted in advance to OBPAC. Members of the public may also introduce themselves and inform the committee that they would like to share a public comment using the chat. Verbal comments limited. Anybody? Can we just open the floor to public comment?
We had a couple of online, things submitted online, which you were able to hopefully review before the meeting and you were able to pick up on your way in. I would suggest we do our public comments, people who are online that would like to provide verbal public comment first, and then we can do sort of a quick verbal review of the things you received online and y'all can provide any comments. That was my suggestion.
Okay, the comments were from, is this one from Digital?
Well, let's go ahead and start with our people that are here in person. Do we have anybody here in the room that wanted to do?
Yes, we do. Armando, who is joining us virtually, if you can, you're welcome to address the committee now. You can turn on the camera.
I think that's you. DJ is a lot of. See Armando.
Armando,
Can we make him big?
Are you asking me to make a comment?
yes, you did put in the chat room that you wanted to make a public comment.
Yeah, no, I thought someone was in the room. Anyway, well, thank you. I'll try to be quick. I have a request and I wasn't sure how to proceed. I recently, as of last year, submitted a new Oregon bikeway that would involve the Columbia River Gorge. This is larger than the historic Columbia River Highway entity, and it involves the potential of actually having a gorge-wide scenic bikeway that would involve southwestern and South Washington. And I wanted to submit the package that describes this kind of bikeway to your committee and to get a response. And after integrating the response, I would then like to revise and perhaps resubmit it and get your approval. So that's my hidden agenda. But anyway, I wanted to really present the packet of information to you directly and really do some verbal explanation besides the content. The page number is about 30 pages. So it is not it's a very different kind of proposal. It's really an attempt to bring in all bodies, all types of bikes, not just along the highway, but really along the entire national scenic area. So it's a very different kind of scenic bikeway. And I've been discussing it the past year with a variety of people, and we're making our rounds to everyone. So my request is I would like to submit it to the full complement of the members, and then at your next meeting, perhaps have a solid 15 or 20 minutes. I realize I'm asking a lot. Some of this I want to hedge a little bit and ask as a previous emeritus chair and member of the committee. So my history, your history, I was chair and member from 2005 to 13. And there you have it. So anyway, I'd like to know the procedure. I think I'm under 3 minutes or 2 minutes maybe. Hi, Andre and Leanne.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I can speak a little bit just from the staff perspective about how to get on the OBPAC agenda, which is, I think you did a great job asking the co-chairs and the group. The co-chairs and the group helped make the agenda for the next meeting. We'll have some time to do an agenda build at the very end of this meeting. So this is good timing. In regards to providing information for OBPAC to comment on, I think that that it could absolutely be something that they might want to comment on. However, when it comes to like approving stuff, like when there's since OBPAC is a advisory committee to ODOT, it's like, I don't know what we would necessarily be approving, but I think that if the committee wants to provide comments on your proposal, they're totally welcome to do so. I also want to note that OBPAC's is a great advisory committee to ODOT, like I said, but is not the essence of the ped bike community, which I think you know, so I'm just saying this for everyone in general. Like if you want the pedestrian and bicycle community's input, there are lots more organizations that you can utilize to help get feedback on your proposal, like the Street Trust or Oregon Walks or folks in the lots of pedestrian and bicycle organizations around the state that I would also recommend going to for feedback. So that's from the staff perspective.
Okay, well, I had sent it to the previous staff member of OBPAC, and so had really not gotten a response. So I will send it to the two co-chairs. That's the proper procedure now, and we'll go from there.
We've also had a bunch of staff changes. We're sorry, AJ. So like you could also send it to me. You can send it to me and to the co-chairs. That would be a great next step.
Okay.
And
thank you very much.
Armando, as an option, I added the OBPAC email address on the chat room. You're also welcome to use that. I distribute out the emails and messages we receive from the public out to staff here at ODOT and the committee as well.
Great. I see the receipt of that email. So thank you much. And I'm really sorry I can't stick around for the whole meeting. And yeah, anyway, congrats and more power to you all.
Have you reached out to the scenic bikeways at all?
Oh, yeah. I've been working with Clint Culpepper for the past year. So we've had multiple meetings. I submitted the bikeway to them, and my next step is to really gather different jurisdictions, certainly the cities along the Oregon side of the river. I've been shopping it, if you will, to a variety of jurisdictions. So you're not the first step, no offense, but you're just, trying to be thorough and thinking that this is a 2-year effort. So this is the end of the first year, and it's been revised quite a bit since I started last January with the Scenic Bikeway Committee. And so it's getting massaged as we go.
Wonderful. Oh, Dale has something to say.
Yeah, I'm on the scenic bikeways, and we did enjoy a very nice presentation, but from Armando last year, and his proposal is very well thought out, and it's worth our attention.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, see you again.
Thanks.
Do we have anybody else that would like to provide public comment?
Okay, I see.
Oh,
one
I
hand.
see some hand waving going on.
Yeah, we can go to Michael, and then Sarah would be next from the Street Trust. So Michael, if you can introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Harrison. My input is I'd like to see more bike town stations. I'd like to see bike town expand into East Portland and Gresham too. I could show you exactly where to put some more bike town stations. I sent an email about this a couple days ago. There's usually sometimes there's absolutely no e-bikes available at the bike town station. So I think I'd like to see OBPAC meet with bike town representatives and kind of remedy the whole thing. So there's, instead of just being completely empty there, we'll have some bikes available. I'm also proposing an elevated bicycle skyway system for Portland. I know this is kind of a long shot. I have more info and images and video on my website, bikeskyway.org. Please take a look at that. But the main thing is the bike town stations. It's very disturbing to go to a bike town station. There's like nothing available. I mean, what's bike town been up to lately?
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have anything to speak to?
I'm happy to comment. Thank you for that. I think it would be great to have Biketown representatives to at least have a conversation with us if that could be organized. Just so we know more about the system, because I know it's a very Portland specific thing, and I know potentially that model would want to be expanded to other parts of the state. It'd be cool as part of our micromobility exploration to maybe meet with Biketown staff and just get an update. How do y'all feel about that potentially?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is Biketown, used to be Nike Town?
Yes,
Or-
yeah, same. So Nike provided the sort of launch funding, and so it's branded as Nike, but it's operated by Lyft, actually. And then there's a partnership with the city of Portland to provide the low income Biketown for All program as well.
So it's completely private.
Except for there's a little bit of public sector partnership. I think they're required to have a contract with the city of Portland to operate, but yeah, it is private.
Right. Thank you very much for your time. And we're doing our agenda build today, so you never know what we'll come up with. All right, I see another hand up there. Sarah, I do believe it is your turn.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for your hard work making Oregon a better place for people walking and biking. We are so grateful, especially we know we have a big transportation package coming up in 2025, and we're going to need to build as much awareness and understanding of how this contributes to public health, economic development, equitable prosperity for Oregonians across our state. So your work is very important. I wanted to comment in advance of an agenda item today that proposed statutory changes related to buffer spaces between vehicle lanes and bicycle lanes. And I will point people toward the letter in the record, but I just wanted to highlight a few of our concerns. One of the things that we're thinking about when it comes to changing public policy, whether those are e-bike regulations or complete streets for multimodal access. What is the problem that we're trying to solve for? How are we looking at data and best practices, not just from our own communities, but from communities across the country and even around the world that can help us make sure that when we do shift something, it helps us achieve our climate, equity, and safety goals, as well as our goals of moving people and goods as efficiently as possible. And so the question that we had about the proposed changes that you're going to be discussing today are, we're not really clear on what problem they're seeking to address through this shift. And so what would be helpful for us in terms of defining our support or opposition would be really understanding what is the problem that we're trying to solve for through this proposed change? I want to make sure that when we do make changes, especially statutory, that it's solving the right problem and that we're using the right tools in our toolbox to solve that problem. The other thing I think would be helpful is to think about any data that we can gather if there is a good problem statement identified. What data are we going to base our decision making on? That would be travel data, obviously, but also any mapping, spatial analysis plans, designs. How can we gather all of the information, qualitative, quantitative, to inform our decision making around this problem? And then finally, always thinking about equity and making sure that we're thinking about our most vulnerable road users as we're reconfiguring the right of way. So I'll leave you to it. I appreciate your engagement in this discussion. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the whole thing. I have a competing calendar invite, but I will come back and I will revisit the discussion through the recording. So thanks again for engaging us in this, and we look forward to hearing what you come up with through your discussion today. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sarah.
And Michael and Sarah, thank you for your public comments today. Your messages have been submitted to the OBPAC members and also posted on our website. Today's presentation on buffer bike legislative concept is also posted online, but I will follow up with you, Sarah, and provide you directly those slides.
Fantastic. Do we have anybody else that has?
I don't see anyone in the chat room and no more hands are up.
Fantastic. In that case, we will move on to approval of the minutes. You guys want to, most of the public comment that was submitted online was also presented here, but they're, except for the culture front. I apologize. All right, yes, we had one other public comment that was submitted. It was from Dick Dolganis. It was about the Reed's Port. There's some changes going on in Reed's Port. They had put in essentially a road diet and then changed it. They decided that there was too much traffic for it and they have proceeded to change it. And so we were asking questions around that. I actually attended a meeting that focused on that because we were asking lots of questions. And basically, there was a presentation and they showed the bike lane going down to 3 foot. We, of course, do not accept 3 feet being worthy of being called a bike lane and had issue with that. Since then, it has been discovered that that was a typo. It is not 3 foot. However, there was some discussion about a sharrow where you would like lose your bike lane for a block. And that is also not something that we really like to see because you are condensing your traffic. And at this spot, it was 30 mile an hour, I think. So people are probably going 40 and trying to interact with the bike at the same time. So we have encouraged them to drop the sharrow idea and keep the bike lane. So it'll be 2-way traffic going one way, a turn lane, and 1-way traffic going the other. And also have a bike lane on both sides instead of a sharrow and a wider bike lane. So it has been a process. I think there were some great questions asked. I requested that in a couple of years, because it will take a couple of years for them to figure out changing everything and figure out what happened, because to me, this was something that should never have necessarily gotten to this point. So they will be reporting back to us about the process and lessons learned and how we move forward. So there aren't things like a typo that sends everything into a flurry. So there you go. Any other public comment before we move on? Perfect. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Does anybody have anything that? Because I have a couple things. No? Okay. So a couple of things on the approval of minutes. One. It says on there that I moved to approve the minutes, and as the chair, I cannot move to approve the minutes, so it had to be somebody else, and I don't know who it was, but it was not me. Anybody remember?
We'll revisit the recording and put the correct name.
I just know that it can't be me. And then the Reed's Court letter, we said that Emma and Beth were going to do it, but I was part of that mix. So we could add into that.
You got it.
Anybody else have any changes for the minutes? At this point, I would accept a motion to accept the changes in the minutes.
We accept the approved minutes as amended.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Fabulous. Motion passes.
Skating, just because I wasn't present, so, yeah.
Perfect. All right, so the next thing on our agenda is division updates. Unfortunately, that has been moved. That means we get to hear about the bike buffer lane proposal statute change appropriately quickly. So I believe Mark Gibson, you guys have the floor.
Well, first off, thanks for inviting us to come talk about this. Our assumption, as you've all seen what the proposed statute changes were and know what we're talking about in general. And mostly we're here to answer questions. But having said that, you've got a quick presentation. I put together a quick presentation that sort of talked about kind of some of the background, and those are the two statutes that we're proposing to change. And if you want to go ahead and move on to the next slide. And what this came out of was actually a lot of things. And first off, I want to maybe back up a tiny bit and say that we completely understand the whole issue with 11-foot lanes and traffic calming, and we understand that that's an option to increase traffic calming and to subsequently increase safety. Where our issue really has come from, and really a lot of this has to do with freight routes, designated freight routes throughout the state, which unfortunately today those freight routes go through the middle of a lot of urban areas. And a lot of the times there are no other options for trucks. And so we're pretty much in a situation where we're dedicated to those certain areas. And while we understand that a reduction in speed is a reduction in more severe crashes, one of the statistics that's not always that's not kept really is there really a reduction in crashes, or is there a reduction in severity of crashes? And unfortunately, in today's litigious society, there are attorneys firms out there that all they do is sue trucking companies. So we find ourselves in oftentimes the defendant in pretty much any sort of an accident, regardless of what it is. So one of the issues that came up with that we're looking at in terms of trucks is the fact that you've got a standard truck, 8.5 feet wide. With mirrors, you're looking at 10.5 feet wide, and you're looking at a.
Roberto, isn't there a really good slide that shows exactly what he's talking about?
Yeah, there is, and I know I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, so.
I'm a very visual person.
I hear you. That's why I threw those up there. So bottom line is safety really is kind of where we're coming from as well. And if you want to go back one, Roberto, this really is what we're talking about. A standard truck is about 10.5 feet wide, which is the same width as a bus when you take into account the width of the mirrors. And I've got up here CFR 49393.11. That's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulation that determines the maximum allowable width of a truck. A standard truck is 8 foot 6 inches wide, and the mirrors generally are about 10 feet 6 inches wide, which gives you your peripheral vision down each side of the truck. So that's a pretty standard number. It can be wider legally, but that's a standard number. So if you want to move on to the next slide. This is out of the National Association of Cities Design Guide. And I just pulled it straight out, and they use a bus, which I think is a really good example to illustrate the width of a standard bus, which is about the same as a standard truck, and their recommendation that you have an 11.5 foot space. Now, they're not recommending that lanes be 11.5 foot wide. What they're saying is that is generally the amount of space that it takes for a 10.5 foot vehicle to maneuver through whatever it might be. The verbiage in the design guide talks about that generally isn't a problem if you don't have two buses meeting or two trucks meeting, or if you don't have a lot of traffic. So I'm not here to say that that's what the design guide recommends is 11.5 feet. I'm just saying that's what they say is generally the amount of space that it takes to maneuver efficiently. So if you want to go on to the next slide. And so here's another example of what we're talking about. So you've got an 11-foot lane. You've got a 10.5 foot. In this case, it's a bus, and then you've got a buffer. And so one of the discussion points that came up multiple times was, well, you can always utilize the buffer if you need to. And a lot of these discussions came out of some of the more busy routes, Highway 101, for example, in the summertime, where you've got motorhomes that are 10.5 feet wide, you've got trucks, you've got a lot of traffic. And the issue was, well, you can always use that, you can always cross that line and use that buffer space. Well, you can't legally. There is a provision that allows a truck traveling with an oversized load under an oversized load permit allows that vehicle to cross a solid line, but a standard truck cannot cross a solid line. So that really wasn't a very good mitigating situation, so to speak. So we talked about, well, what could we do to at least give a truck a little bit more margin, specifically in some of the tighter areas. And so we thought, well, maybe we can modify the statute to allow a truck to cross that line. And then as we talked in our the SIMPAC, we've got an 11-foot lane width working group meeting. And the members of that meeting are Walt from the construction industry, myself from trucking, Jessica Horning is there from the ODOT's Bike Ped, Oregon State Police is there, and a number of other individuals. So we talked about what we could do to come up with a strategy to help alleviate this issue. And so we thought, well, this shouldn't be limited to trucks. This should be limited to vehicles, bicycles included. If a bike needs to cross into the buffer, a bike should as well. And it's not, the statute doesn't say that this is a normal travel lane. It just simply says, when safe, you can cross over this solid line into this buffer lane, which currently is illegal. So that's basically what this particular one shows, a 3-foot buffer, and I'm in agreement with you. 3 feet generally is tight. I've seen, and I'm sure you have too, there were a couple recent proposals that had no buffer lanes for bicycle lanes, which I don't think, that's not good for any of us. I mean, we in the trucking industry, we don't want to, I mean, we would just soon see separated bike lanes. Honestly, I think that's good for everybody, but unfortunately, funding doesn't allow that to happen. So bottom line is, that's what got us to where we were at. Oregon State Police signed on it. Jessica was a big part of the discussion. And the Department of Justice signed off on the wording that we have proposed. So I don't know if you want to go, I don't know if I have another slide.
That's the statute.
Oh, yeah, the statute. Sorry about that. So this is the current law. And if you want to go one more, you can zoom down if you want. But if you want to go, okay, so this is the proposal. And basically, there's a proposal to 811-370, which discusses motor vehicles, and 814-430, which pertains to bicycles. So if you want to hit the next one. And yellow is the portion of the changes that that we've outlined. And basically what it allows is a motor vehicle to cross that center line to utilize that buffer space only in the following circumstances: when reasonably necessary to avoid hazardous conditions, including but not limited to fixed or moving objects, parked or moving vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, animals, surface hazards, or other conditions that make continued operation in a lane unsafe, or to avoid unsafe operation in a lane on the roadway that is too narrow for the driver to operate a vehicle as nearly as practical, entirely within a single lane. And it goes on to say the driver has first made certain that the movement can be made with safety. And that entire section was basically needed simply to allow a vehicle to travel on that solid line and not be in violation of the law.
So why don't you flip back to the previous one? I just wanted to point out, this had to be so specific because OSP insisted that we not take away their ability to cite someone for distracted driving or impaired driving instances. So we had to be very specific about being able to make certain that there was a reason that that person could be over there. So policeman's following someone down the road and they're starting to do this, that this law wouldn't just let them off. Well, it says I can cross the line. So, and it took 2 or 3 meetings and quite a little bit of interaction with OSP, but they came forward right away and said, you know, we understand what you need. we understand that safety is the big issue for all users. And I think that's something we want to keep stressing here is that the way we're looking at this, we're trying to provide safety for all users. And on any given day, construction we're the ones delivering all the rock, pavement, concrete through all of these urban contexts. And that's why we get so passionate about it, because our drivers, it's very difficult for them to make that happen. And we've been in play, and you have too, about this whole, I heard you say the word road diet. When that first came up, no one explained it to me. But we're all suffering, I think, from the road diet era. And the thing in Reedsport we were aware of because it came through a Mac.
It hit a lot of buttons.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's all I wanted to add, just so why that had to be so carefully crafted.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to be very careful. The intent isn't to just allow someone to drive down the buffer lane. That is absolutely not the intent. So if you want to move,
Can I ask a
yeah, go ahead.
clarification on the previous one, just because I'm not good at reading the legal stuff. Does that specifically means both A and B have to be true to allow somebody to operate in the buffer?
Correct. Yeah,
Not just one or the other.
correct.
Oh.
Right.
Maybe it'd make more sense to reverse them, right?
Well, I mean,
You know what I'm saying? That's what.
I'd argue I'm operating safely in the buffer lane, but if I didn't have one of those reasons for being there.
Right. Yeah. The whole point is, okay, these are all the reasons that you can utilize it, but ultimately in the end, you have to be able to ensure that it's done with safety. So
And that was my big issue when I first read this, is exactly what you were saying. I didn't want OSP or other law enforcement to feel that this basically made it too hard to prove, so they weren't.
exactly. No, that was the big issue with the state police as well. And they, through, as Walt mentioned, a fair amount of wordsmithing, this was deemed to make sense and not limit their abilities.
So my read on this is actually, it's not an and, like, is it? Just for clarification for Dave's question. And if it's not, we could move that into a discussion portion, but.
Oh, I thought it was both.
My understanding from the DOJ, when DOJ went through it, and that was my understanding.
Before we jump into a discussion, I'd love to do a quick sort of like staff boundary on our.
He's still presenting.
Oh, God.
And you're correct. You're next, but it's not done yet.
Thank you.
So I didn't know if there's any more questions there, but if you want to move to, okay, so this is, okay, I'm sorry, go back. I lost track of where we were. So 814-430, now this is the statute that pertains to bike lanes. And obviously, as I'd mentioned earlier, we weren't looking for this to be a truck only issue. We were looking, we determined that it really needs to be for anybody if need be, because the current rule says that that you need to operate a bike within that bike lane. So this allows a bicycle to actually do the same thing if needed due to obstruction or whatever it might be. So. And if you want to,
And this one, like the difficulty to read, you have to go clear back to the top to figure out when does G come into play, right?
Right.
But when you do that, when you go back up to where item 2 is, it makes sense that one says you have to be operating as close to the curb as practical if you're riding a bike. And this is saying that if you have to ride in the buffer zone, then you don't necessarily have to be close to the curb.
right.
Go ahead.
I understand that.
Yeah, the highlighted portion, yeah, the only thing that's in addition is the yellow highlighted portions. And then this is also in addition because we don't actually have this definition of a buffer space. And it's really just to clarify what that is.
So before we trip into whatever's coming up next, I think Sarah posed some good questions in her public comment. And he said, what are we solving? And do we need to discuss that here?
I think you answered it pretty well, but in one short sentence, what are you solving?
In one short sentence,
Neither of us could do it in one sentence.
well, I mean, you'd have to give me, yeah, I need AI, thank you. The issue is simply put, safety from the perspective of the driver of a truck. And we have illustrated that in ODOT, construction people, the paver association, AAA, and the Oregon Trucking Association put on a safety symposium starting last year, and we have another one this year coming up. And one of the things we did is we set up 11-foot lanes, and we had a truck sitting there and allowed people to sit in the truck and really see how little you can see from inside a truck. And that's really what we're trying to solve. There's a great deal of stress being a truck driver in an urban environment. Believe me, a truck driver doesn't want to hit a bicyclist. I mean, he might survive more than the bicyclist. I get that, but there's still a huge amount of concern there in terms of safety. And that's really where this is coming from our perspective. We don't want to see bike lanes next to travel lanes. We want to see buffers in terms of an 11-foot lane versus a 12-foot lane. It was pointed out to me at one point why a bike needs a 5-foot lane, and it's for wobble. And my whole point was, well, when you have a truck with 2 or 3 trailers, there's a whole lot more wobble than 3 inches on either side, which is really all you have. So that in way more than one sentence would be our point. I know I failed.
I couldn't do it either. I would have interrupted him, but it's a good conversation because together we both are trying to establish a process whereby ODOT can satisfy us in the urban sector. Until we get close to talking about a buffer, we were getting Lombard Street. Anybody ride Lombard Street in the room? When they came to take 11-foot a lane down to 11 feet or 10 and a half, Bob Russell was still there. We were talking about the fact that we're going to be clipping bikes with our mirrors.
Yeah.
And we went on and on and on about that. And each time we'd come back, the last couple of years, ODOT's been more respective of our interests, our mutual interests, and where they can leave us the 12-foot lane by any other circumstance to the right. In other words, put the bikes in another way or give them more space in their own bike lane. They've been able to leave us that 12-foot lane. But physical constraints come down to where they have to take that 11-foot lane, make 2 11-foot lanes, right? Not leave us the 12. And so this is an objective way and a way in defining what this buffer, we'd like to call it a safety buffer, but I think the buffer space is cleaner. And it apparently DOJ sort of said, let's just call it a buffer space. And so I guess that's what she asked us. There is data, and we can provide data that we listened to that talked about that. And then we really think it is an equity issue. And we think that this is a way to give us both that wiggle room in an urban environment.
So before we kick off the discussion, I wanted to just remind folks kind of what I said earlier when we were talking to Mr. Miller. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Question on.
We're gonna we'll just say this thing and then it'll just provide structure for this. That's all right. So OBPAC is advisory to ODOT. So we normally don't have really intensive legislative conversations outside of sort of that ODOT legislative stuff, but realize that this is still in the works. So it's a great time. OBPAC is not the ped bike community in Oregon. Again, we're an advisory committee to ODOT. So staff would really suggest that you also reach out to organizations like the Street Trust and Oregon Walks and people who are part of the ped bike community. So this is an advisory committee to ODOT. We are people who know a little bit more than the average human about pedestrian and bicycle things. However, if you're trying to get a ped bike perspective, I don't know if this is your box to check necessarily, because we are, OBPAC is an advisory committee to ODOT. So just wanted to say that out loud, that this is one step along the road, but I hope that there's a long.
I guess you should know, we didn't come here expecting to get approval.
Okay, cool.
We came seeking your comments like you've already provided.
Right.
And in hopes that that'll help us as we present it at the legislature to understand. And of course, Jessica's been just kind of, as you know, she's very passionate about your issues and our issues as well. And she was very helpful in helping us get to this. So we think that we'd like to hear what your response is, what your reaction is. Certainly not seeking approval or.
Well, it's great. Just wanted to create that.
No, that's, we're used to that because we're an advisory committee to ODOT as well, so.
We like that.
All right, so on, questions, discussion.
Questions to our presenters, yes.
A clarification, you said to you it's an equity issue? Could you explain that?
Well, we think it gives, you want to do that?
Well, so to back up a tiny bit, all of these projects, and I won't even say, well, I'll say 99% of these projects that come to us that are moving from 12-foot down to 11-foot lane, we are always giving up space. And we understand with active transportation, we understand where we're at in 2024, and we're moving that direction. There's a lot more active transportation, a lot more bike ped activity out there. So we understand that. And so it's been told to us many, many times, well, it's only fair if we add these bike lanes. It's only fair if we improve bike ped facilities. And no argument there, except every time we are giving up what we consider a safety margin for us. So that's, from my perspective, really what we're talking about when we're talking equity. It's like, okay, we're giving up a certain amount of space that we drive in. We're giving up what we consider that little bit of buffer margin that instead of 3 inches on each side, or we're going to 3 inches on each side instead of, 8 or 10 inches. So that's from our perspective, what we consider equity.
Thank you.
I was hoping that her use of the word equity was like looking at all the users and say, we want to be as fair as we can.
Right.
And I was holding my breath that it wasn't some other use of the word equity. So.
We have more.
I have a question about if you have an oversized load permit, can you use that buffer regardless, since you have an oversized load permit and this is more for just general trucking, or?
This is for any motor vehicle. And it has to be that way. We couldn't specifically say trucks. So that's why we said any motor vehicle. And that's also why we added bicycles, because that was an easier way to do it. It made more sense. And from a legal perspective, that was the direction to go. If you have an oversized load, then it's there's another statute, which I don't remember off the top of my head, which specifically allows you to cross that solid line if you need to.
For instance, if you've got one of the narrower bike lanes that you're working in and there's an inlet and you have to move into this buffer zone, that's what we're providing for, or a tree limb, as somebody pointed out, should there be an incident and the bicycle was in the buffer zone, they had the right to be there.
Right.
And then I guess as a trucker, right, you can drive in that buffer zone illegally. It is more safe to drive partially in that buffer lane and have extra width. But is this more about just for the legality and like your liability for driving in that buffer lane?
So what you're saying is currently a truck could travel in that lane physically, obviously, but you're in violation of the law, right?
Yeah.
And all this is doing is allowing you to utilize that lane only in circumstances need be. If you're being Nothing in this law would change the fact that if you're being followed by a state trooper and you're just traveling down that buffer lane for no good reason, you can still be cited.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not the intent, and that's not what this law would allow either.
Yeah, like it is the intent just to make it so that you have less liability. I'm not, I totally get like economically, like
Fortunately, we'll probably never have less liability, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
I think it's really important. I mean, there's some goods you have to transport with a semi truck. And
Right, and that's a whole nother issue, absolutely. And believe me, in a lot of these urban environments, most trucking companies would so prefer not to be downtown.
Yeah.
But especially as I'd mentioned earlier on freight routes, that is the designated route for trucks.
Yeah, and I think it is really like, I mean, that buffer lane's in reality, it's not really being used for much besides.
Right, and it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be.
Yeah, but I think it's really, I mean, you're trying to utilize everything on the road, and I think it's real important that if you're a trucker, you can use that buffer. I mean, if that's what makes it safer, yeah, you should use that. And if that's what you need, and that's the only way to get this huge object downtown, yeah, you need to do that.
Okay, we're running out of time. So
Okay. Yeah, so
let's get
yeah.
somebody else. Ready?
Thoughts, if I could quickly share them.
Quickly,
Okay, well, how much time did I get? 2 minutes?
1 minute. go.
1 minute. Okay, great. So I sort of sense truck driver safety being equated to urban cyclist safety. Those are totally different experiences. So I wanted to be clear on that. And then I think I just wanted to sort of bring to my fellow OBPAC members that it's very interesting that we are at a point in our societal conditions where a motor vehicle is being permitted into a buffer lane before electric bikes are allowed on sidewalks. So I just want us to think about where we are and how we are, what are we prioritizing? So it is illegal, as you know, in the state of Oregon for electric bicycles to be ridden on. What do you think is more dangerous? Trucks coming into buffer lanes or e-bikes being on the sidewalk? That's for us to ponder.
Good luck.
They're just rebels.
We understand.
It's just, like,
Okay, I'm just saying that the e-bikes are rebels.
hey.
I got one.
I have a comment. Based on Sarah's letter, it appears to me the answer to her question why is so that bicyclists don't litigate against trucking companies when they are injured or when their family litigates when they're killed. As she put it really well, as currently written, the statute requires the operator to stay in their designated lane as nearly as practicable and to refrain from moving from that lane until the driver has first made certain that the movement can be made with safety. It appears that is adequate without allowing trucks to be on the buffer lane. Okay, so that's one comment. I totally support Sarah's letter. The other is questions. Really with these widths that you've presented on this handout, what is the maximum width allowed vehicle in Oregon?
Well, the truck itself is 8.5 feet with no mirrors. A truck is required to have mirrors. So a truck with mirrors is 10.5 feet wide generally, but there is no maximum width.
All right, so this 10.5, how high are the mirrors?
It depends on the truck configuration. If it's a cab over, which I illustrated here, which there are fewer, the mirrors are high. If it's conventional, which are what most trucks are today, the mirrors are considerably lower, and it can vary.
We've also, and you'll start noticing, we've added the omnidirectional mirrors down on the front fender. The ones that have the kind of wide angle view. So those would be out at about bicycle height.
And those would hit a bicyclist.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's my questions. Okay, one more. When you talked about, I think you mentioned motorhomes, are they 10.5 feet wide?
Yeah, the larger ones are this same width as a bus, basically.
Okay, we are moving out of time.
Can I make one quick comment? Please? Very quick, I promise. In terms of, we're not trying to equate safety of bikers and safety of truck drivers. Obviously, it's far more dangerous as a bike rider in terms of pure physical damage. So I just wanted to make that part clear. Did you have any?
Nope, I didn't. We got good comments, but they really are.
I would like to.
Oh, I'm
to this committee. I'll let you go. I applaud you guys for thinking outside of the box, because I know that this is an issue that every time something happens that this conversation comes up, and I applaud you guys for thinking outside of the box and coming up with some solutions. What is your timeline for feedback?
Well, we need to have this attached by January 31st.
January 31st? So that's
8 days.
stare at something.
While you're doing that, that's not to say you can't comment or you can't be, we hope you'll be participating in the presentation to this at the legislature
How many hats we have to wear? Come on, man. All right, so I would say for our committee, if you guys have comments or want to have nice written statements, if we can have them, and Roberto can kind of like help me with this, if we can have them by the 26th and kind of polish them up, and then we will try to get them to you by like the 29th.
Clarification on that, as individual OPAC members or a suggested one from all of OPAC?
We're gonna come up with a game plan here in just a minute.
Okay.
And you wanted to say?
Okay.
we really aren't pushing for a formal anything. We could leave here right now and be perfectly satisfied that we picked the hot spots and I think that those three things that we have addressed are things that we'll be focusing on at the legislature. What is the problem?
Yeah.
No, thank you guys for walking into the lion's den and being here.
Oh, no, we didn't consider it that way.
Not completely anyway. Okay,
Let me just let down my hair.
thank you.
If this goes through, we do expect that trucking industry will be more receptive to putting in more buffers and narrowing the lanes.
We are not separate bike lanes and buffers. We are all about that.
Yeah. Okay, and the one other thing then, we're really not trying to just look at shirking our responsibility in terms of accidents with bikes. The issue for us isn't whether we hit a bike. The issue for us really is other traffic. I mean, we don't need to utilize a buffer because of a bike. When we need to utilize the buffer, it's because of oncoming traffic or other traffic issues. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Governor's office, do we have Kelly here? She's not here yet. Okay, so we're supposed to have a break. Went a little long on that one. So let's go ahead and you guys have 10 minutes. So back here at 2:10.
You're generous, Chair. Thank you.
I did that now.
Be nice to you, so you'll be nice.
Sometimes it works. So we wanted to make the breaks a little bit longer than usual because y'all are here in person. So like, it's always the hallway conversation. It was actually, it was supposed to be a 15-minute break, but since we actually skipped something,
How long of the break?
you got 10 minutes. It's still recording 2:09.
Folks who are online, we'll be back at 2:09.
We stop it. Are you muted? Are you muted?
Yes, you're muted. Oh, it's. It's solid still.
Presenter is running a little bit behind. So we are going to go ahead and move on to OBPAC updates. First is our recruitment. So Beth.
Okay. So, Dave and Nolan and I are on the recruitment subcommittee. We have had 49 applicants since, when did we start from there? The first, second, third?
About a week and a half ago.
Okay, great, which is wonderful to hear. I'll go back a step, is we have already met and reformulated the application and interest form so that it reflects what we would like to see in our next OBPAC member. So that was a fun project, I thought. I'm a wonk. And so we feel that we're gonna get a good representation, and that people who are underrepresented traditionally will feel through that application that, oh yeah, they want to hear from me, they want me to be on it. That's the goal. And I'll just put out that right now, that's the goal for anybody who hasn't applied to be on OBPAC. That's where we're at. We are going to go over everything February.
It's like 21st.
Yeah. 4 p.m. We're having a Zoom meeting, the three of us, and third week in February, I think. And that's where we're at.
Any questions about the recruitment at this point?
Oh, and I'll just mention so people know, it's for the environmental position and the at-large position. We have 2 openings.
Yes, please come join us. It's so much
28th
fun.
of February.
28th of February is when we're gonna first look at them.
Okay, and then the next thing on the updates was Read Support Project, which I already kind of gave you guys an overview. Do we have any questions about that? Really, I flagged it as something that we need to watch because they built something due to distracted drivers and drivers getting angry and being bad sharers of the space. They are now reconfiguring it and moving forward to a different space. So 2 years will be after my term expires, so I really encourage you guys to kind of like an eye on this to make sure that it is revisited, because the process itself needs some help, in my opinion. Okay.
And I'll do a little background on that is we found out about it through a letter during our public comment session. And so that's when we took action. So when we talk about the process, maybe we need to be involved in these kinds of things early, just a simple email to us.
Well, but we're trying not to get too much down in the weeds, guys. We need to be focusing on the protocol, and therefore the protocol needs to be enforced. So we're gonna pop back to the division updates and Safe Routes to School solicitation update from Leanne.
Yeah, so it's just a quick reminder that the Safe Routes to School grant program solicitation is opening very soon. Applications will be open February 12th through March 25th. There's a piece of paper that looks like this on the table that is the announcement of that opening. And since OBPAC is sort of a consulting committee to the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, and Mavis is on the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee. I'd like to let you guys know what is going on and when that's happening. That'll be about $30 million to allocate to Safe Routes to School projects, which are pedestrian and bicycle projects within now a 2-mile radius of schools. So there've been a couple of updates in the last legislative session, extending the mile radius to 2 miles, opening up eligibility, not eligibility, but making equal priority for elementary, middle, and high schools. We used to focus mostly on elementary and middle schools, and now it's high schools as well. And the third piece, which I'm really excited about, is a further reduction in match is now possible for communities. So we're really aligning with the federal legislation that came out through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act here in Oregon. Some great updates on that legislation. So this solicitation will be really exciting for a lot of folks. It'll expand eligibility for folks that are applying for that program. Let me or Zal Posadas know if you have any additional questions about Safe Routes to School, but something that we get to be excited about to pass out money for great projects. And thank you to Mavis for being on that committee. I get to give away my name free. I like that bit. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do, I think we're gonna do a round table. Just have people been attending meetings and what has. So Jill, for example, I'm gonna call on you first, like the bikeways, what else are you on? There's a couple things that you are on. Has anything happened since our last meeting?
No.
Thank you for being so punctual. No?
I sent out applications for OPAC to professors I know. And that was about it.
Awesome.
I don't have to yet.
No updates. What you want, Rick?
No media updates.
How am I supposed to kill time if you guys have nothing? All right, we'll go ahead and I think we can do some good work and then include our governor's office representative whenever she is able to make it. This is our first time asking the governor's office representative to come. I don't know what their scheduling is like during the legislative session, so in my brain, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that something has come up and we're just not quite sure where we're just not, I don't have any information about it. So as an ODOT employee, I'd like to apologize that we don't have a speaker right now. And I'm learning, I think we're learning through this process as well. So I'm sure some crazy legislative thing has come up, is my guess. But hopefully Kelly Brooks will be able to come to speak to us soon from the governor's office. And in the meantime, we're going to do an activity around your work program. So Amanda is here to help with that facilitation. And can y'all let me know, have folks that had a chance to look at this document and read through it? Amanda's gonna make sure that everybody has a copy. And we are gonna do an exercise. So for the first part of our, Roberto?
Since we're the folks who are joining us virtually, we are not taking any comments at this moment. The work plan is for the advisory committee. So you are welcome to join us and watch, but at this moment, we're not taking any comments from the public.
And the work plan is online.
Great, so we're gonna start with an activity to review the work plan. We're going to think through what's working well, what's not going well. Is there anything missing from this work plan? Basically, as you were reading this, like what were your thoughts about this? I'm going to give you some instructions. So, and then you'll do some alone work, but feel free to chat with your neighbor about it. You're going to each get some sticky notes in 3 different colors. And you'll notice that your work plan has kind of 4 different categories. The network development and advocacy, funding programs, leadership support and education, and committee help. So we want you to go through each of those categories and write a couple of notes about what's going well with each category, what's not going, and put your what's going well on a blue note. And then what's not going well, put that on an orange note. And what's missing, you can put that on your pink note, and I can write the colors up on the board with what they're for. And then here's that's the directions. We'll go through, right? It's been about 5 minutes on each section, write some quick notes, kind of gut thoughts. What's going well with this? What's not going well with this? Is there anything missing from this? And what we're going to do is after you've had about 5 minutes for each section, and I'll give you kind of a note, like make sure you're moving on to the next section now. We're going to put your sticky notes up on the white paper that is associated with each of those goals. Amanda's going to help group some together. So we're going to look for some themes. So now here's one more piece of instruction. As you're filling out your sticky notes, what's going well in blue, what's not going well in orange, and what's missing in pink. Once you're done, if you've got like your top 3, you're like, I've written 10 sticky notes, but these are the 3 that are the most important to me. I want you to make a note on those 3, like circle the things that are the most important to you and try to limit it to 3. And that'll help us get all of your ideas, but also see your priorities around each of these topics. Any questions? And thank you, Amanda, for writing which color goes with which thing. Again, what's going well is blue, what's not going well is orange, what's missing is pink, and circle your top 3 notes, the 3 things you think are the most important. Any questions before we let you go? Get you started. All right, feel free to work as an individual or work with a neighbor or get up and walk around and go sit next to somebody that you want to work next to. And if you have any questions, just wave me down and I'm happily.
I think we're just saying for like each one, you're like, what we think's going well is on blue.
Okay, so we repeat.
What we
Do a focus
think
area,
could do
right?
better
There's network.
is on orange, and what's totally missing is on pink.
Now,
With what?
read it,
Yeah.
and then.
It's like one
things that you
statement
think
is
are
this.
Going
Like
well.
this, one of the areas, one of
So I
each.
would go
And
like,
then,
Engage local.
I would write like set A, just write set. Or when I write the word.
I would think that. I think this is going great. Human words. Okay. Humanize it.
Okay.
Because this is.
And then what, and
inhumane.
then write what it is. Post-annual state reading workshop.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Right.
Right, feel free to move on to the next section if you've already started looking at one, just giving you a little time check. Yeah, so, this one, so what you'll have in the strategies, I was actually thinking the same thing, but what you have written in the strategies are actually things that you can do. So like, continue to reach out to ODOT governor's affairs throughout the 2023 legislative session. You can, like, your advisory to the governor, you see the ODOT, so they can send letters as a group. The legislators, but these are the people that you can. Get it. Okay. Wrap up your thoughts here in a minute and then tell you, and then we'll go get back on it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Kelly, wave your hand when you're ready, okay?
Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna let you wave at me. Y'all are working on it.
Oh, when you wave your hand, you're on.
Oh, sweet.
If you haven't moved on to the third section yet. No. This might be a question disappointment. You ready?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. Put a pause on that. This is, I'm Maple Parks, I'm the one of the co-chairs of this fun OBPAC. And we were really asking the question of, since we are a governor appointed committee, what do you want us to do?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we will, this may be a crushing disappointment to all of you, but I was hoping, I'm happy to talk about the governor and transportation and focus areas heading into 25, but could we do introductions first, just so I don't know who else on the committee. Do you mind? No, it's okay.
I keep starting with Dell, so we're gonna start with Roberto instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi Kelly, I'm Roberto Cotto. I am the Active Transportation Program Analyst for ODOT, and in my role, I support this wonderful committee.
Yeah, among other things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda Howell. I am the Innovative Mobility Program Manager for ODOT, and I'm also here today providing some support for OPAC.
Hello, I'm Andre Letuwalker. I'm a at-large OPAC member and I'm a transportation planner for Metro.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Leanne Greason, work for ODOT, staffing OPAC. I'm Mavis Hartz. I am the bike shop person. I own a bike shop. That's how I get to be here. And I live in Eastern Oregon.
I'm Beth Young. I am the planning and local government representative. I'm a planner with the city of Newport.
I'm Dave Thompson, I'm ex officio member, which is something new that they're trying this year. So I was actually not appointed by the governor's office, but I am from Bend, so I'm kind of here to represent Central Oregon. And I'm new, so.
I'm Nolan Poole. I'm just a regular OBPAC member. Do I serve any special role?
You're underage.
Oh, I'm young. That's why I'm even at the state of Oregon. And I live part-time in Portland, part-time in Eugene.
I'm Del Scharfenberg. I represent the scenic bikeways and the recreational trails. I'm also, I live in Milwaukee, Clackamas County, and I also on the Clackamas County Ped Bike Committee.
Great.
I'm also a very avid bicycle commuter between Clackamas County and Washington County every day, so.
What's your route?
I go over the Selwood Bridge and Riverview Cemetery and Oklahoma Boulevard and Fennel Creek Trail.
Okay.
We have some additional ODOT staff and some guests online, but all the members are here.
Okay.
Managers, I don't know if we want to do more introductions or just. I think. Back to you.
I'll defer to you. Okay. All right. Well, so I'll introduce myself a little bit and then we'll, yeah, we won't leave here today saying the governor told us to do these 3 things. Just to go ahead and set that expectation, but I think, we can certainly inform, kind of the exercises you're going through right now. I'm Kelly. I am the governor's transportation and infrastructure advisor. In that capacity, I do work a lot with ODOT, but I also have the Oregon Department of Aviation. I have DCBS, which you might not know, so building codes and OSHA. Yeah, DCBS, the Department of Consumer and Business Services. So I do spend time with them, which is a little outside of my background, but and then I have infrastructure more broadly, mainly insofar as the White House likes to have like a single point of contact where they can call and say, like, who's your infrastructure coordinator? So I get to be that person. And Leah Horner, who now works at ODOT, I've had this job before, so it's kind of fit well with whoever has transportation. Before I took this job, which now a year ago, I was the assistant city manager in Milwaukee. So, and I was really interested. I was there for just over 5 years. And one of the things that attracted me to it is they had just enacted a fee to help build out their ADA transition plan and their active transportation network. And so I thought, okay, let's see kind of what it's like to try to build out active transportation projects, but with a local funding source. And there'd just been a lot of organizing in the community that was really had positioned it well for implementation, which was kind of cool. So that was really fun. So I do have that background. And then before that, I worked for ODOT. So I was in ODOT Region 1. And I kind of worked my way up through and then ended up being the policy and development manager there. So that's all the planning pieces and the money, STIP and major projects, all that good stuff. So that's how I got to where I am. I'd say, as you know, most of the conversations right now around transportation are having to do with money and how we've had this kind of interesting dynamic where it's been great and there's been a lot of additional resources coming in at the federal level, but basic maintenance and operations is not well funded for all the reasons you already know, which is we've got more expensive projects, more expensive operating costs, and less money coming in through the gas tax. And that's just a declining revenue source. So we have a problem, like a structural revenue problem with how to pay for the things that are important to us on the transportation system. And the governor is she was speaker for she was definitely speaker for HB 2017 and was around for the prior transportation funding package as well. So she knows and has pretty defined opinions on kind of the role of the governor's office versus the legislative branch in terms of like putting forward revenue raising proposals. So we have been looking to legislature we want to support the legislature, help identify the problems, help identify the solutions ideally, right? It's not fun just to live in problems and figure out how we can best support a conversation that they need to have about revenue raising. And that right now is not going to happen in the short session, but that there's a lot of interest in trying to have that conversation in 2025. The parts that she has communicated and continues to share, number one is we really do have to figure out a way to get back to basics on transportation. We can't end up in this place where we don't have, where we're kind of adding $19 million in general fund money right before winter so that we can afford to run the snowplows, which is what we've had to do this year. We are also adding kind of one-time general fund money to help do cleanup work, trash and graffiti and all the things in Portland. So that's not a sustainable place for us to be. We've got to figure out how to cover our basic maintenance and operations moving forward. That's really important to her. I think for your work, safety is squarely a part of, I think, one of those things that is basics. Like, can someone walk where they want to go, bike where they want to go, and be able to get that without getting run over by a car? That's a pretty basic thing, right? So now we all know that the solutions to that are pretty complicated and can be quite expensive. But I think the basic concept is for the purposes of the governor and for our conversation today, I think safety is probably where you fit most squarely into that statement. The other thing that she's talked about is, keeping our promises. As a part of HB 2017, we did make some commitments. I think one of the most high profile ones that I hear quite a bit about is the Rose Quarter project. There was a dedicated penny allocated to that, and that project has not broken ground. The reasons for that are actually quite sound, right? The project, it was a defined allocation of money and not a defined scope. And the project was presented as being something that could bring forward and represent community benefit, but really hadn't fully involved the community in defining that benefit, right? So since that time, there's been a lot of great work done. Albina Vision's gotten really involved, Historic Albina, like a lot, a lot of folks have really weighed in, and now I think you have a really kind of comprehensive project that represents sort of what the community would like to see. But that project is $1.5 billion, not 500 million, which is what the dedicated penny would raise. So I think it's again going back to that, like if we're going to say we're going to do something, we got to figure out how to do it. And also we have a pretty major funding gap here. So how are we going to deal with that? Another priority area for her, and it'd be interesting to kind of hear how you all think maybe this could fit into your thinking and your work planning. Workforce is incredibly important to this governor. Capital projects and transportation is incredibly expensive. And if we're going to be making that type of investment, how are we lifting up community and providing good paying jobs and helping support the people that are doing that work when we're building it? So she's a huge proponent of, strong labor standards, making sure we're tapping into small and diverse businesses and contractors as we go. So that's just another place where she, so kind of her three kind of main priorities as we get into 25 is got to get back to basics. We got to figure out how to keep those big promises that we've made and fulfill those so that people can believe and have credibility in our ability to deliver on those commitments when we get the money. And then workforce, how are we making sure that we're really being progressively minded in how we build up our community alongside those capital investments when we do. And then I think the other thing just to know is she's a very, I really like working for her. She's incredibly smart and she reads everything. Even like we do like this just giant weekly report every week where every policy advisor is just sort of like giving, and she reads it and you get notes back. I mean, it's phenomenal actually. And so to that end, like this period of work where we really need to dig into like, what do we have? What are we using it for? And what does success look like in terms of the agency and moving forward? Those are all really important things that I think we are expected to be able to provide to our legislative partners to help inform the revenue pieces of this. So I'm doing my very best to help kind of continue to provide the governor with what she needs, work with the agency. We have a lot of thorny, our revenue pieces right now are challenging because we've had this really easy to collect, pretty stable revenue source. It's now on the decline. And we have some super unpopular ones that are out there right now that we know we need, and we need to figure out how to navigate through them in order to have success. But yeah, how we get from where we are to there is pretty important. But personally, in terms of your work, I am very interested in kind of what you're thinking in terms of safety. There is an LC that we've We've been looking at the initial list of LCs from ODOT, and there is a safety one. It's largely related to kind of construction zones and auto enforcement. But I've, as someone who now, so been working in and around active transportation and safety for like 20 years or something. What are we gonna do? I mean, I feel like we've been like trying to, Vision Zero, we've been trying to do investments, and now we still have record levels of people dying on our streets, which I know is something you all are thinking a lot about. So we know we need to do better. How are we taking a hard look at what we've done, and not losing the momentum and the push to do what is right, which is stop that, like to turn these numbers in the other direction, because continuing to be on this trend is unacceptable. So, but I think we need smart people, which you all are designated smart people, who are thinking about, okay, what have we been doing? What have we been building? What policies have we been putting in place? And have those actually made anyone safer? And where are they working? Where are they not? And if we're going to be putting more money towards that, which we know we'll need to, what's the smartest, most effective way to keep people safe when they're not in a car? Because in a car, we've got a lot of technologies wrapped around them. But our users that are just out there not surrounded by a car, how are we keeping them safer? So I think maybe that's what I was hoping to hear from you all, because I'm sure you're thinking about all those things. Yeah, is that a good place to stop and let you talk and ask questions?
That's a fabulous place to stop.
Okay.
Ask questions. I think everybody probably has something they want to say, so I'm gonna put start with Bill.
Okay.
And Andre on this one, I think. Yeah, what do you have to say?
Oh, first, thank you. That's amazing to hear everything. I think that feels like my vision for the future. Like, yeah, we're going the wrong direction, and it feels like, I'm just sort of getting into this work. There's a lot of people who've been doing it a lot longer than me, but they've been focused on, pedestrian and bicycle safety, and it's going the other direction. And so as someone that's like stepping into the field, I don't know the best way to, say, thank you for the work you've done. However, like these strategies aren't working. What does the next iteration look like? And I don't think we have the time or space for it to not work in this next round, if you will. And so I guess I'm just excited to figure out ways to collaborate so that we actually see those numbers go down.
For me, I've been involved with like the transportation plan, a couple of these other things where like the vision is awesome. Like it is incredible. Where you're integrating every form of transportation and you're trying to make everything safe and you're making it work. And so those goals and a lot of the policies that have been put into place, they are incredible. They are awesome. They're underfunded, and they are not coming to fruition due to money or personal stake or just some of these other things. So I think some outside of the box thinking might need to come forward. The one we were just having earlier, you missed a really interesting presentation from a couple of gentlemen from the trucking organization. And they were talking about, the road's really small. Well, the road is really small and those vehicles are very, very big. And we've decided we're gonna make a shrink gun to shrink all the cars. But I'm not quite sure how it's a little more practical might come to fruition where, the cars in Eastern Oregon, I walk by them and their hoods are up to my shoulder. And I don't, death by design is a thing, and I think we need to start looking at that. So that's my input.
Yeah.
I'm more of a question, big picture question. I know we kind of advise ODOT mostly on safety. Is there a whole ODOT department on safety, or is it just integrated everywhere in ODOT?
Ooh,
should we
want to do that one? Yeah.
Yeah, I can take a little bit to it. There's a transportation safety office that's now housed within the DMV actually, and an example is like Heidi Manlove, who's presented to OPEC a couple of times, works in the safety office, and it's run by Tracy Pearl, but Amy Joyce is the division administrator of the DMV. So there is an ODOT safety office. They mostly handle federal funds, federal safety funds. Put them out, they run a lot of grant programs for like non-infrastructure. Anyway, that's what I've got.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I would say in terms of embedding it throughout the agency, and again, I haven't worked for ODOT in a little bit, but you know, it is a core value and and to put it bluntly, the agency has folks on the side of the road often, and many of our contractors and the ODOT employees have died getting hit by high-speed vehicles. So I think it is something that not only is there the division that's responsible for reporting back on the metrics, but in terms of a culture, there's a lot of respect for the issue and usually a pretty direct connection to an impact.
So it's through, I'm guessing through the DMV because it deals with more than the road. It deals with the paired driver policy, distracted driver policy, those billboards we see. So it's more than just the road, is my guess.
Yeah, they get money for, so like we get money for all types of safety activities, so they can get education, campaign money that would run through them. And then there are different boards. So there's like a DUI advisory body. There's a couple different advisory bodies too. And a lot of times it's a collaboration with law enforcement. So some of those funds can go directly to pay overtime to like, to law enforcement for certain, and they'll do kind of targeted like crosswalk enforcement activities, right? And they can do grants for that. But it would be worth learning kind of more about, because I know the version that's like 6 years ago and I'm probably 20% wrong in everything I'm saying.
I think you're right.
All right.
Like, it just all basically picked up and got moved over to the DMV. It used to be. So anyway, the structure doesn't really matter, but I think the work is still the same.
Yeah.
And I would like to have more of a connection with somebody from the DMV.
Yeah.
I've been involved in bicycle safety, I guess, for 30+ years now on various committees. I used to live in Portland, now I live in Bend. I think at this point, the tide has kind of swung from making sure that everybody that operates on our transportation system know what they're doing and how to do it safely and be incentivized to do it safely, to we really need to create an engineered solution that prompts people to do the right thing and is forgiving when people don't do the right thing. And I really agree with that, but it's going to cost an unbelievable amount of money and take an unbelievable number of years to make that happen, assuming we can. So in the meantime, I really think that we can get some shorter returns by going back and focusing on enforcement and education of everybody involved. And what I see right now is enforcement has become almost impossible for a lot of reasons, many of which are fundamental social problems, like can we enforce in a equitable fashion, right? Enforcement always seems to end up being non-equitable, which makes things worse. So that's no good, right? But without enforcement, nobody's incentivized to be safe, really. I mean, and so the people at the bottom, the pedestrians, are the ones having to take care of themselves because the people further up the food chain are not really incentivized to be careful. So I think we need to do all of those things, but I think we could get a lot of bang for the buck if we can figure out how to make enforcement work again in a socially conscious way. And to be honest, my impression from our local law enforcement folks is they will enforce the most egregious things. But beyond that, it's every time they pull somebody over, there's a raft of reasons why it could go wrong, and they would just as soon not be there. And they don't have enough staff or money anyway. And overtime by the way. I have heard directly from them. It's like, sure, give us money for overtime. Our people don't want to work anymore. They will not sign up for drunk patrols at 3 in the morning. They just don't want to do it. They've got families and, you know, their life balance has changed. So we've got lots of problems in that area, but I think we have an opportunity to make a lot of improvement. That's my
That's helpful.
long 2 cents first.
That's all right.
I guess, well, thanks. I thought it was a really good presentation, first off. But I guess I'm just wondering, you know, what is your vision for the future of transportation in Oregon? Because I think you've worked to be in a position where you obviously care about the transportation of Oregon, you want to change it somehow. And I guess my vision is to be like a bike dominant infrastructure, because, you know, in my opinion, it's better all around. And I guess I'm wondering, what is your vision, and how does OBPAC play a role in helping you achieve that in Oregon and hopefully spreading it around the nation?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a big question, my vision. I think for now, I will just kind of tuck into, I do have a lot of feelings and thoughts about transportation, or I wouldn't have taken this job. But I think where I keep coming back to is, and it really aligns with the governor, around like just quality delivery of service and customer service. I think we've gotten, because of the costs and because of the challenges with repairing and fixing and providing a safe way for people to get around, we've become quite a bit disconnected, I think, from the people who use the system and how they'd like the system to be. And I would just like to bring those things way closer together. Whether you're going to ride your bike and you want it to be a bike down, I want it to be easy for you to do that, and for that to be a choice that you get to make and you feel safe doing. If you are a mom trying to go get your kid, I would like that to be able to work for you, at least know that you have options to be able to figure out how to get there. So I think at a basic level, just like for people who are trying to get around, to be able to look and see the state of Oregon as somebody that's helping them do that, and not someone who's getting in the way of them doing that. Right. And I think the more we can move towards that, the more ongoing support we'll have to make the investments that we want to see. But that's sort of like, I have a lot of specific things I care about. But it just feels like the chasm we've got too much gap between what people think we're doing to help them and what we're actually doing to help them, and how we can bring that closer together is kind of probably what I care the most about. And when I think that reason why I like working for this governor is because that's kind of her priority, is to show that the state will show up for you and that we care about you and that we can actually make things better. So anyway, it's not a lot of the specifics you'd probably like to hear, but that's kind of my generic response. All right.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that Dave talked about sort of hits a nerve with me too. I know this state is not responsible for most of the local law enforcement and so forth, but seems like, especially in the Portland area, there's not much effective law enforcement. The state, they could make more money than they need if they started assessing fines for lawbreakers. It seems like it's passe now to pull people over for any type of traffic violation, and they don't even enforce car registrations or driver's licenses. I mean, it's like a free fall. It's Wild West, and it's scary.
Yeah.
And you know, when they do try to do an enforcement on street racing, for instance, or car theft, it makes headlines because it's just unusual. They make a few arrests. Meanwhile, they're just putting a dent in things, and that's just a scary situation. And when we're trying to help craft new laws and stuff, it just seems like no laws are being enforced anyway, so why bother? And it's the same with infrastructure. We work really hard to get nice bike facilities built, and then they just get destroyed. There's not the money for upkeep, there's a lot of vandalism. There's a lot of illegal camping. I mean, some of the bike paths in Portland are literally unrideable. It's just extremely discouraging that you work for all these things and they happen, and 2 years later they're all trashed. So I don't know what we can do about any of that, but
We can make it better. Well, I mean, a lot of what you're saying shows up in the crash data, right? You're seeing a lot of folks that are in some of the more serious crashes are, have expired licenses, are uninsured, impaired, the same speed. A lot of the same factors that we know contributed to the most serious crashes are still at play. So enforcement is a key part of this, and I didn't mean to say otherwise. However, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like, we did live through the past 5 years. We can't ignore the way that enforcement has been playing out historically in our country and in our communities. And if we're going to do it, we got to figure out how to do it better. So I think it's sort of like yes, and now we can't just walk away. We have to come back and figure out how to do this in a way that protects people that are vulnerable, and I think we can. I do also, that is part of why, even though I'm an infrastructure nerd, through and through, I work for a governor who's not an infrastructure nerd. She cares though very much and is spending a lot of her time on housing and homelessness and behavioral health. So I think we all rise and sink together. So I think we do have to, transportation's not over here off on the side. We have the same challenges playing out on our multi-use paths, and we have to kind of work on all these things together. I have 2 small things that I'm going to just throw out to you all that are kind of maybe less daunting that I've been thinking about, and just see if you're all thinking about them, more on the design side. So when we're designing intersections right now, everything's really geared towards what needs to move through that intersection. And it's never, from what I can tell, none of that really ever ties back to time of day, time of year. And we know when you look at the crashes, particularly pedestrian crashes, a lot of them are in winter at night when you have those longer periods. So I've been trying to figure out if there's some design guidance, even just around signal timing, not rebuilding things, but how could we better inform at least how our intersections and our signals operate, somehow linked to light. Just, and where does that come in? Because that seems like something maybe that could have an impact and cut down, at least in some of those windows of time. So that was one question. The next one is actually less about, it's a different kind of safety. But back to how we designed all these multi-use paths, and now everything's way hotter. So we have certain corridors that we're developing that in the summer aren't really very usable. Because they get too hot, because there's no shade along them, or maybe there's different ways we have to be thinking about how to shade those facilities. So that was another question I have for y'all, just in terms of not more like tweaks, but just sort of design guidance. Maybe this is you. Be more you, right? But how, I know you all are doing that work, but I don't quite know how best to support it or to think about it. And I don't know that you need legislation, but it seems like we're missing something. And just full disclosure, my husband actually just got hit on the 99E, by a car. He's fine, but he was running home. It's fresh for me. But, so right at 17 in McLaughlin. And it just made me think even more about okay, I look at that intersection and I know why those lights are timed the way they're timed. And I know it's peak travel time, but it's almost in direct contradiction to what you would actually need to do if you were going to give if you were going to prioritize somebody safely crossing in the winter in January 2nd at 6:30 p.m. So I don't know. Those are my kind of more nerdy type thoughts.
Do away with right on red.
Yeah.
It's a conversation starting, right?
Yeah.
So, people who are turning right on red are not able to look at everything.
And more often than not, they don't even stop, they just look.
Yeah.
If they don't, They look left to see if anybody's coming and they turn right. It is, I agree with that.
Right, I don't know if I can remember that, but, well, and it ties back into enforcement, right? So if you can't enforce it, are you gonna enforce it? If you're gonna enforce it, okay, if not, but yeah. And I've just been thinking a lot about when it's dark. I don't know if that gives you all what you're looking for today. Is there anything else you wanted me to talk about?
Oh,
Yeah.
What I'm kind of trying to encapsulate it. I'm feeling like safety for the most vulnerable users is where the governor is interested in, and maybe she would like us to help ODOT be more safe for vulnerable users.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to keep it at the governor's direction level, I would say I would follow that same trajectory, which is like basics, maintenance and operations, and safety is a part of covering the basics. And the data, and she's data driven, and the data is pointing you towards pedestrians, particularly in urban areas, and frankly, particularly at multi-lane urban arterials. But I think how this committee, and I'm not asking you all to fix it, and the governor's not asking you to fix it, but you are advising ODOT on how to help keep people who are biking and walking safer. I think that's your primary charge, right? So how can you do that? And to your point, in the near term, right, you can't build everyone a separated facility right now. So.
Are we ever going to be separated facility? Is that even part of the vision? My vision.
Not my vision. Everywhere, all the time, all at once? No, you'll never have just separate. I mean, that's floating bikeways in the sky. You know what I mean? You'd have to have prioritize where those types of facilities are most needed and will have the biggest impact. But I am part of this learning, I'm hoping, is I'm not sure that blending all the users together on slower speed facilities is working in the way that we had intended. Like the Greenway method, where you try to slow everything down. It hasn't eliminated the conflict necessarily, but I don't know that for sure. So I'm not saying that I don't have a specific vision, and the governor doesn't have a specific vision of what that ultimate transportation system should look like and what the components should be. But it certainly shouldn't have record high fatalities for pedestrians on it.
So
is that
one of the things that has come up to us recently is there's this thing that happened in Newport, right? So the ODOT system isn't great. So what people have done is they have added to it. So towns, cities, whatever, they have done these paths. But these paths are great. They really add to the system as a whole. However, now there's litigation, and now a lot of these cities are deciding to close their paths. So how do we make it? Because to me, this is something that has to become more our office must, so that things will move forward and that we can have these.
this is the recreational immunity thing?
This is a recreational immunity thing.
I haven't worked, I just so you know, I haven't read in on that one. I mean, I understand, and I hadn't actually really thought about the connection to multi-use paths.
Not a whole lot of connection to multi-use paths, because those need to be ADA accessible anyway.
Okay.
So there's like a, it's like a, what I think what Mavis is bringing up is that like a lot of people for in that example, like Newport, maybe not even Newport, I'm sorry, but like say there's like a busy road, but you want to walk on the beach instead.
Right.
So you access the beach. So it's not necessarily a multi-use path, and it's not really like a designated parallel route to the highway, but it might be something that people choose anyway. So from what I can tell from ODOT's legislative team, like we're kind of keeping an eye on this, but we're not really engaging because like I don't believe, because the paths that ODOT builds are like more the multi-use paths, less the recreational trails. But like what Mavis was saying, it does intersect, because people oftentimes will use like a trail instead of walking on the road if it's available. So anyway, like I'm learning about it as well, but.
In terms of where you all can help kind of implement some of it. So where do you all sit in terms of like review pipeline for various grants right now? Is OBPAC setting with that? I know Safe Routes to School has its own.
OBPAC reviews Oregon community paths for a specific funding source. OPPEC also helped prioritize the 45 million that the OTC dedicated in the 21-24 STIP.
Okay.
And I believe OPPEC helps with the policy around the sidewalk improvement program. Is that correct? I don't think y'all select projects, but I think that you helped. Anyway,
So more, because I talked about a lot of very big things. I think where the rubber often meets the road for you all is you all are helping shape and inform the funding mechanisms for people to make these exact types of improvements. And you can help set the criteria and help shape what's actually invested in. And, you know, one of the things we did, I was in Milwaukee, so we couldn't get a sidewalk built on a stretch of 99. So we built an elevated path. Now, will that ultimately be not the greatest thing to use all the time? Maybe not, but you know, you can get off 99 and you can ride, you can have a separated facility and that receive different state grants. So like thinking about where you are, what your job is, what your charge is, where you're touching various pots of money and how those funds can be used to enhance safety is like you play a really critical role in that. And then also those same programs are the ones that heading into a 25 conversation, people are going to have questions about like, is that one working well? What should it look like? Do we think it should be? Obviously, you're probably going to think more money should be in some of those pots, right? So I think given that how have your investments performed? How have they helped improve safety? And which ones should be repeated? And how should that inform how the next money is spent? I think that's how y'all will really be most helpful. That, and I think, I don't know how you interface with design guidance for the agency, but yeah, I think there'll be specific places where you can help with that too. Like for projects, you know, like, can ask my dorky, lighting question.
I know like over is now a new, I'm gonna botch the details. So the overhead lighting is now something that we look at. But I don't know anything about timing of lights.
I think we've done all these intelligent transportation system where we can, you know, as we continue to advance the technologies that operate our systems, how can those be more responsive to conditions? And we do that. We actually have iterative, like if you go up, we did projects like on Mount Hood that like we are basically adjusting the speed for drivers based on driving conditions, right? So if the pavement temperature is X, you know, you're going to lower the speed. I think there's got to be ways to do that with signal timing moving forward so that you could provide more time and safety in periods of the year when you know you're more likely to have like a serious or fatal, like pet or bike interaction. I just think there's got to be a way, but maybe that's a question I can ask like different time.
Okay, we are running out of time.
Okay, I'm done.
We very appreciate being here. So some of the things that we focus on is like sidewalk infill. That's definitely been one of our points. Is there anything specific that you're like, other than safety, and this is like thankful for?
It really is safety, I think, and I like system completeness a lot. I hate sidewalk gaps. I hate having unfunded ADA transition plans, and so but I do think given the crisis, it feels like we're in with safety, thinking about how you can focus those investments in places where you think you'll have the biggest safety impact needs to be something we're thinking about.
Anything else before we go back to our?
I'd just like to comment real quickly that I think, you know, as you said, Governor likes to take it up to a high level. The impact of transportation failures falls most heavily on our disadvantaged population. We know that. They're forced to use, they can't just decide, well, I'm going to drive my big SUV because I'm safer in it, right? So I think really by focusing in the right places, have the biggest problems, we will also bring better quality to access to transportation to everybody.
Yeah.
You could almost turn that around and say, if we focus all of our transportation improvements where we have the most people who don't have good access to transportation, we will solve a lot of our safety problems. So.
Yeah.
And I really hope that transportation is part of the force that they're focusing on, like. What person needs to be, how does that? It's part of the story. Anything else, Russ?
No, I hope it helped. Thank you for your. Can we call you anytime we want to? Call, I'm actually not that hard to find. But yeah, we'll stay in touch and figure out as we go, but, all the work you do here, it's really important to ground truth in here and test out kind of the concepts and the ideas that the staff are working on. So thank you for taking your time and spending it here, because I know it's not always an easy thing to do.
There's also been a lot of conversations at OPEC in the past around the maintenance piece, and that we do need to maintain our existing infrastructure, and that is a barrier as well to building bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, is that if we can't maintain it, it's fairly hard to advocate to get it built. So the maintenance funding piece is pretty key for pedestrian and bicyclists as well in the state. So just that has been said several times here. I heard a lot of that there's some overlapping in priorities with the governor in that area as well.
100%. Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is drive around right now and look at a bike lane. It's not one you want to ride in because it's got gravel and 5 broken candlesticks and, so yeah, I think that's where I'm interested in. What are we learning? Like, what's the feedback loop? Are we seeing when we design these things, what's holding up, what's durable, what's actually making people safer, and how do we invest? We're not going to ever have enough money. So how are we spending our money in the right spot? Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Figure it out. It's really nice to meet all of you.
Your husband's okay.
He's fine. Yeah, he's actually great. We were really lucky. And yeah, don't lose hope.
Thanks so much for coming.
Kelly Wilson, Susan, our division administrator, and this is Kelly Brooks, transportation specialist for the governor.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Thanks for being here. Here, Susan, you want to do yours?
Here I am.
So, committee roles, staffing, and legislative updates. Carlson. That's quick.
Say what am I talking about again? Updates.
Yeah.
Can we do this first?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Hi, everyone. Suzanne Carlson, Public Transportation Division Administrator. It's getting more easy here because I've already talking to us and it's online. So I'll bring up the slide. I'll go ahead and go up the advisory roles and responsibilities. So we're just going around to all the advisory committees to just refresh a little bit around core responsibilities. And I'll also add that spent ODOT a couple of years and I've been in this role about 2 months, so I'm maybe not your best initial point of contact for all your detailed roles and responsibilities, but I'll give you just a high level look at expectations. Next slide. Can you guys hear me okay? So we've got the Rail Advisory Committee, Public Transportation Advisory Committee, Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, and the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. You can see from kind of this quick look here that people have similar roles. The other committees are all appointed by the ODOT director, whereas OBPAC is appointed by the governor. And for the most part, the responsibility is to advise the Oregon Transportation Commission and ODOT. Zoom out a little bit. That's about right. And then you see some detailed information there about specific duties related to the purpose of the advisory committee. Next slide. And then specific to the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, as I mentioned, the appointment's a little bit different. Functions are fairly similar. So advising our Oregon Transportation Commission and ODOT, and then acting as a liaison between the public and ODOT, advising on regulations, establishing bikeways and walkways, bicycle and pedestrian issues. And then specifically, and you guys, again, probably know some of these details better than I do, right, is making recommendations for the Community Pass program, identifying a representative to the Safe Routes Advisory Committee, and local government grant programs at parks. So going over the roles a little bit. So for ODOT management, myself as division administrator and the crew managers, We attend advisory committee meetings, we provide updates and guidance as I'm about to do, and then consider requests by committee members, depending on what the issue is and whether that sort of escalates to management level. ODOT staff, of course, supports the committee logistics. Usually that's the designated committee staff. Sometimes there's additional staff members supporting the group, presenting and facilitating, bringing topics to the committee, especially those that are required to come to the committee by statute. And then they may be doing additional tasks and requests by the committee based on their capacity. I will note at this point, you guys have probably noticed that we're a little shorthanded in some areas, especially in our policy unit. So sometimes that can be limited in what we can do to support the committee. It's a pretty broad world of bicycle pedestrian issues and needs and pretty broad community. So it's not always that we're always able to support all the ideas that come forward. So kind of keeping it within the scope of what the committee does and what staff are able to do. And then lastly, committee members coming ready to participate, doing the advanced work on documents and reviewing things, and then bringing your best ideas to us as far as making recommendations to OTC and to ODOT as required. I think that's really all I have here.
I wanted to follow up with one sort of view. So in regards to like me and Roberto, I just wanted to, so you'll have like an OBPAC staffer, which is me right now, and I love all of you. And Roberto plays a support role in specific logistics for the meeting and logistics around like our equitable compensation program. But really, and I feel like he's been kind of he's been the stable contact for a long time now as we've switched other positions. But I want to try to bring all of your communications to me. Roberto will help with logistics and EECP. But if you've got questions about the work plan or just bring those out through me, I might consult with Roberto because he might remember things better than I do. But I can handle all of those pieces as your ODOT staffer, and Roberto will help with all of the logistics. That's our division of labor for that piece. But yeah, any questions for?
I have a question on slide 3. Mentioned local government grant programs at parks. Where does it say that? I didn't know we did that.
Yeah, actually, both of those are me.
So what, explain please.
Y'all, OBPAC is listed as one of the spots on that committee, just like OBPAC is listed as one of the spots on the State Routes to School Advisory Committee. It's just run by OPRD and Mavis sits on that committee now. For a brief second, it was Mike.
Yeah,
I thought I made it. And then it came back.
So that's what I mean by parks is Oregon Parks. and
Yeah,
Recreation.
sorry, I should have spelled that one out.
That's fine.
Oregon.
And so the local government grant programs, that's just another granting program that for when local governments request infrastructure improvements.
It's mostly lottery funds.
Okay. And so specific projects that, it's a whole grant program that, okay. Thank you.
You too can serve, maybe next year.
The actually right into updates.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, give me marching orders. Yeah.
Legislative updates, please.
Yeah, okay.
Probably legislative. Would you like me to do these and then we'll be. So one of the printouts was provided to us by Collie, our legislative staffer this session. And she wanted to let us know that legislative days are happening January 10th through 12th. The short session officially starts February 5th through March 10th. And Oregon does like every other year a short session and a long session. So Kelly Brooks mentioned that the long session will be in 2025 is when they're thinking about that, the funding conversation. We also have the roles of state agencies in the legislative process. There's a couple of bullet points showing like we represent Governor Kotek and the governor's agenda. ODOT informs legislators about our work. And we advocate for our agency to achieve our mission. So there's a couple of bullet points on that handout that lays out that role a little bit better. And then there's 2 legislative concepts that that ODOT's tracking that might be that this committee might be interested in, and we got a little bit of an update on those. So Representative Emerson Levy's e-bike bill, and Representative Daniel Nguyen's e-micromobility bill. I was about to say both of which I think we're coordinating with. Okay, Amanda is sort of the ODOT staffer that is helping coordinate with those, provide some expertise around the topic to both of those legislators. I can read through these bullet points if folks want to, or we all can just kind of get the update in the written form. Any questions that basically, if we have questions, I would write them down and I would email Collie and she would provide us with answers. But any questions about this legislative update?
And what was her name again?
Her name is Collie
Sullivan.
K-A-L-I, and yeah, and she regrets not being able to be here today during legislative session. It's hard to coordinate timing. So she let us know this morning.
From what I understand from reading agenda notes, agenda attachments for this meeting, Trenton's law is something about allowing e-bikes on sidewalks, not allowing it for people a certain age. Could you tell me, Amanda, or anybody?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Oh, okay.
And I have you repeat the question so I can write it down unless Amanda caught it.
What is Trenton's law?
So I will comment on the most recent iteration of what I saw it to be, I think, which is really it's about updating the definition of e-bikes to adopt the federal definition and be consistent. So that's the IIJA, that's the that would be the three-tier definition.
Okay.
And I believe that when Representative Levy presented on this during a past legislative day session, she had said that one of the things that this bill would also do would be to eliminate the age requirement for e-bikes for bikes that are pedal assist, but they would have a 16 and above age requirement for bikes that have a throttle.
Okay, so I'm guessing that Trenton, I think, died because he was on a sidewalk and he was going fast with his throttle. Like, that's what is that correct?
Well, I'm not really in a position to comment on what he was doing at the time, but he did, your specifics, but he did have a passenger on the bike, and one of Representative Levy's thoughts is that passengers on pedal assist e-bikes are a lot less fun. And therefore restricting under 16s to pedal assist would make it less likely that they had passengers, less likely that they're going faster. And just that it requires a lot more attention if you're pedaling. It's just motorcycle.
And then the micro mobility bill is what?
This bill, the idea behind this bill is that it would introduce a legislatively mandated task force to study e-micromobility.
Oh, great. Great ideas. In my opinion.
All right, are we back to staffing? Staffing?
So I don't know when you guys last met, but I know it was recently, but you know, things have been changing a lot. We're kind of working to stabilize staffing here at PTD, and so we've actually been doing a lot of hiring, which is great. It may not be in spots necessarily relevant to bicycle pedestrian work, but I would say on our transit side, we've got some compliance folks hired, and we've got some regional transit coordinators hired and filling in some spots, and we have a couple of units that are pretty well staffed. I will say that our policy and strategic investments unit is the one where we do have some really key vacancies. So the good news is great opportunity for people looking to work at ODOT in bicycle and pedestrian policy. We've got some great openings. We're in final interviews for the transit operations manager. Again, more on the transit side. And we do have a posting that's open until January 29th for the policy and strategic investments manager, which would be all these folks managing.
And I sent that in an email to you weeks ago.
Yeah. And so that was the role held by Susan Pikeman, and before that by Marsha Hoskins, although we separated out the one that we're I just mentioned transit operations manager who can split off so that there's kind of a more manageable workload and a bit of division of labor between having one more manager essentially to manage folks, and so hopefully giving a little more attention to each group from a management standpoint. And do we know about, did we announce about your new role? Hear that mix? Sure. Okay. And Amanda Howell has been hired into what was previously a rotational position, and so she's now the Innovative Mobility Program manager. Okay, fantastic. So that's great. So that sort of takes a rotation out of the mix and gives her a permanent role in that role. And that means we'll actually be hiring for first and last mile coordinator, which is the role she previously was serving in. And what I'm trying to do is avoid the bad news, which is that Jessica Horning, Dr. Horning here, good news, bad news, has taken a new role with state parks. So happy to have her continue in state service, but going to be sadly missed in ODOT. There's a lot of institutional knowledge with her. So if she did want to join and maybe speak up as well for yourself if you want.
So, starting March 1st, and I'm the statewide trails planner at Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. So Dell doesn't get rid of me because I might be taking over staffing the recreational trails advisory committee from Jody. So we'll still definitely have a connection. There will still be a lot of shared work between my new position and this one, but my last day in the office at ODOT is going to be February 1st. So I have some time to go to Minnesota and help my mama for a bit. And so it definitely is part of some larger change with staffing, but I think the program is in really good place and really good hands with active transportation liaisons and the PTD team. So really proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish. 11.5 years we've been at ODOT. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's big change because community support. See. You
will definitely be sorely missed, and congrats to Parks for kind of getting you in their service. So.
Yeah, for Parks.
Yeah, we can blame Jenna Martin for all of this. So. You were here when Jenna Martin was our Region 3 active transportation.
So the good news is that you're hiring rapidly.
As rapidly as we can, yeah.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. All right. Are we done with the committee role staffing and legislative update? Who missing? Awesome. Okay. My agenda got hacked. So I'm trying to. Okay, we missed that part.
All we have left is the work planning.
All right, so we have work planning. You guys who are walking us through the work planning, you have till 3:55. Well,
Okay, we, let's finish the activity that we were working on before. Thank you all both for coming. I'll tell you about the activity, but in the meantime, you guys, make sure that you are, I'm gonna set a timer for 5 minutes to make sure that you have time to look at the third and fourth goal, but hopefully you may have already gotten through the first two goals. But that's our goal. That's where we're at. We're writing sticky notes, what's going well in blue, what's not going well in orange, what's missing in pink. And we have about 10 minutes left for this activity. And after you've written all of your sticky notes, please circle 3 of them as your top 3. Thanks. If you haven't yet, think about switching to the last category. If you're kind of wrapping up, don't forget to circle your top three and then go ahead and put them up on the, under the appropriate focus area on the wall. For folks online, we will be capturing these notes on with a picture, and we'll include them in in the notes from this meeting.
It's hard to know how much of that stuff is.
Well, I feel like they already.
Good
put everything
value.
in. Every time something you get out. Do it again.
Stuff that's small.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. I think we're trying to narrow. Jessica didn't run off, did she? She'll be back. Okay, good. We have about 1 minute left, so start circling your priorities and make your way up to the papers. Amanda's gonna do some consolidating of ideas, and we're gonna do a brief debrief about what your takeaways were from that activity, and then we're gonna go to our next steps while Amanda's consolidating ideas.
Some of you were more creative than I.
I knew this would be hard for the new folks, so thanks for.
I tried.
We've got so many new people that it's. Jump right.
Use culture, OBPAC culture without any.
Oh, what's funny is Jessica's running to buy some Oreos. So it's just like that's it's like a long-standing thing that Jessica would always bring Oreos to the meetings. And so that's the first thing that came to my mind when you said, are you losing culture? Like, yes, we are. I didn't even bring Oreos. You're absolutely losing culture. Okay, so that's my timer. Stand on up there, put your sticky notes up on the board. Amanda's gonna do some consolidating for us. And while she's doing that, we will do a brief debrief roundtable about this activity.
Just consolidate. Move it up.
I think so. I think so. Unless you're like, that's gonna hold us up. It actually would be better.
No.
Think outside of. Okay. All right, so. Andre's gonna put his feet up, Amanda's gonna start consulting. Oh, I'll give you one second. too fast. We're gonna run out of time. Sorry, I was really trying to juggle it. You did great. You did great. We had a lot of really good things to
We did
discuss.
have too many things I got wrong.
Yeah.
Made my timeline.
That's right.
Welcome to the sneaky check. Let somebody pull the fire.
Nice. Okay, so we might have enough. In 30 seconds, we're gonna start a debrief roundtable where everybody has about 1 minute to tell your experience so far while Amanda's doing her magic. And then we're gonna move on to the next phase of this activity, which is to put our ideas in a quadrant of impact versus effort. So that we can start to see. Okay, so let's start, since we've started with Andre the last couple of times, and since he's still writing, I'm gonna start with Del and we'll come back around.
Back to Del.
Del, can you give us kind of a 1 minute debrief on this activity so far, if anything, it's sort of rising to the top for you as being
I'm not very good at these kind of activities, but I think we've expressed ourselves. I think in general, there's he does a good job. We do need more people. We don't have enough time to do everything we want to do. As far as fundraising goes, there's never enough money for anything. I think we've expressed our frustrations already about the way things were, about lack of enforcement. I don't know if that's anything this committee can do anything about. Anyway.
Thank you, Del. I think you're nailing it, that our work plan is actually pretty big for the number of people that we have, so that's an interesting.
My comment up there was that we have a great work plan, but it's just a plan and it's too big for, nothing gets done. We have a lot of good intentions, but nothing gets done.
Thanks, Del. Right at 1 minute. Awesome. Nolan, do you have any initial thoughts about this?
I think, well, I don't know if it's really because I came in at a really weird time, like low staffing, and also we're focused on like recruitment because of the low staffing. But I feel like a lot hasn't really happened since I joined, and I would really love to focus on like, I think we need to act. I feel like we haven't really done a lot, and I really would want to make an impact on like, ODOT's a huge organization and they have a lot of power, and I feel like I would really love to make, not just review the few people that want to come review with OBPAC. Like I would want to make suggestions and say, hey, this park should have a bike path. No one wants to be here. And it's like a lot of people wouldn't use it, or, stuff like that. And I'm sure our transportation engineers at ODOT that actually probably calculate this out. But I don't know, I feel like we could do a lot more like actively looking for things, and then also actively having a better connection with OTC and trying to get as much out of the STIP as possible and just trying to do our best. But I think that's also really hard because, we don't have any to do anything, and like there's never enough money or enough time for anything. So.
The underdog to then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You're right at 1 minute.
Can I add something? When we were doing this recruitment last year, and we had a lot of good applicants, and Dave sort of rose to the top, and we did not select him as a regular member just because he didn't fit all this specialized and he didn't check all the specialized boxes, but he was by far the best guy. And at the time, we said, well, we'll get him on the sidelines here and he will be ready to fill in anybody resigns. Well, we've had 2 people resign, so let's move him in there.
I say let's put a pin in this conversation topic for right now while we're working on the work plan, because I think that we can come back to it, but I want to do a debrief about the activity.
That's something I meant to mention and just haven't,
Great, thanks, Dale. All right, Dave.
So, I looked through this and most of the vast majority of these things, I have no idea if we worked on them, if we've had any success or where we are. So, but things I called out, I think that my interaction with the committee as a local OBPAC member was good when you guys were doing the outreach. Although I will say, even now, as a member of OBPAC, I'm still not sure how the 2 sets of organizations can best help each other, and I think there's still progress that we can make there. Under funding, we absolutely have to address the maintenance thing. I think that's not really in the plan. And like most of our organizations, we've been focused on capital building stuff. Now it's become clear we really need to solve the maintenance problem. And the other one I called out is still need to make the committee bigger, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes to kind of what Dal was saying as well. Great, right at 1 minute, you hit a nail on this. All right, Beth.
The one I worked on was network development and advocacy. I was on the other end along with Andre. We had, just so you guys know, we had a community meeting with input on how we can best help BPACs, local bike ped advisory committees. They had various names. And then, because for various reasons, we haven't done any of the things that we wanted to do. So I just have my, that we didn't do any of that. I don't know how much we can put into it until we have more people. I would like to do some of these things because we put a lot of effort into how we can best serve these local groups. But we just can't until we have enough people. Okay, one more thing I want to say is I think 2 additional people is not enough. I
We could
would
talk
love
about
to see.
expanding our ex officio members.
Yeah, especially a dedicated disabled. Representative disabled.
Moving on to Mavis, 1 minute. Well, I have actually got to work a lot with this and I didn't realize how good we really are doing. And you guys haven't been around long enough to really realize how much has happened. Having said that, this last year, we definitely had to slow down, and that is a direct correlation to what is happening on ODOT with our staffing and what is happening within this committee with a whole bunch of turnover. And part of this exercise is to get you guys on board so that we can re-energize and keep sailing on. And talking about I want to be more into where the bike path goes, and I've got 2 committees for you, my friend. Because I'm both of them.
I didn't necessarily want to do it.
This thing that is happening, and right now it's me. And I would love, I got 1 more year and then done. So anyway. That's enough for me. Right on time. We're gonna do these 1 minute report backs. Andre.
All right. So the first thing that sort of emerged for me was there were a lot of question marks, meaning I didn't feel like I was communicating with the people to know if this thing had gotten completed or not. Not to say that it had or hadn't. But yeah, I actually felt like we did do a lot of things we set out to do. And in some other areas, I think we dropped the ball and felt that pretty significantly. It feels like a very big work plan especially after getting some clarity from the governor's office today about maybe direction for us, very specific direction. So I'm excited about the next iteration of this.
Under a minute.
So
Okay.
succinct.
Hey.
So since I know we're supposed to be wrapped up around 4, and I have a couple of suggestions for next steps on this. My suggestion would be that Amanda give us her take on how everybody's things are coming together under each, sorry. I talked about under for each category, just kind of verbally. And then what I would suggest is that what we're gonna do is we were gonna this is tiny, so I'm gonna show it, so I'll walk it around. But we were going to try to put it into an impact versus effect graph to see like what is going to make a big impact with a lot of work, what is going to make a big impact with a little bit of work, and what is going to make a little impact with a lot of work, and what is going to make little impact with a little bit of work. My suggestion is going to be to focus on the big impact, and y'all either can pick. This is not set in stone, but my suggestion would be to either pick one thing that's going to have a lot of work and a lot of impact and focus on that one thing, or pick a couple of things that go have a little bit of effort, but a lot of impact, and kind of decide how you want to use the time that y'all have to commit to this committee. So what I would suggest is that I take an initial stab at turning this into information that we can work with, and I bring it to the co-chairs meeting, kind of draft form, having put things into this style of analysis. And then we bring it back to you all. So I was hoping we could do this part of the activity today, but we've had great guest speakers, and I didn't want anything to be cut short. So how do folks feel about that strategy? Yes.
Could we add any other members who want to be part of that meeting?
The co-chairs meeting, I was just kind of gonna bring a draft to you all, and then I think we would send it to the larger committee and either have that and potentially have the follow-up conversation, I guess in our March meeting, or something like that, unless you all wanted to do it in between meetings between January and March, or try to do it in an email form.
I mean, how much, do we have a bunch of stuff on the itinerary for March, or is that? Or do we also like figuring this stuff out?
March, currently we've got an Oregon Community Paths update and a Great Streets update. So it's just sort of some programmatic updates that you all have had your influence, that you have your influence on in different ways. And we would be, yeah, so those are the two things that I currently have on the agenda for March. And we haven't really, we also haven't really had a chance to do an agenda build, so we might do that via email.
I think that we should move towards adopting whatever this thing is at our next meeting. But everybody should come with opinions and then figure out where their name's gonna go, because we have spent more than enough time on this document.
I think what this process will do is shrink it, and it will show y'all what your priorities are, and then you can put your names next to the things that are need to be kind of shepherded through by a committee member. And if we have something on the list that no one can put their name next to, my suggestion is we take that off. Yeah, we will fit it.
Go. Okay, I'm gonna start over here. I think this is the most, in some ways, like the clearest and loudest in some ways right now, which is that, as many of you mentioned, turnover, resignations, and then the need to increase the size of staff for outcome is clearly a critical, I think this is clearly a critical need. And it also relates back to some of the comments over here, which are that there's a lot of great ideas and goals, but you don't have enough staff in order to actually accomplish some of the things that you have written down here. So I think that's kind of like what is very much like loud and clear. I'm just gonna go real fast because I know we don't have a lot of time. So I think that's what's loud and clear on the committee health piece. There does seem to be, I think there are some sort of, some folks who are feeling maybe like onboarding is working pretty well, and then others feeling like maybe onboarding still has room to grow. So I think there's probably still some work to do there. On the leadership support and education side, I think we're a little bit more, there's a little bit more variation here, but I think the idea that we're both kind of not following policy and what happens when that, what are we doing when we're not following policy, and what is OBPAC's role there. Also ODOT advising ODOT on revising policies related to the bike bill, advocating for legislation on behalf of the public. These are things that it feels like OBPAC is missing or not doing very well right now, and bringing that bike ped perspective to every project. But that there is on the what's going well, good momentum, meeting with ODOT staff and government affairs, and some additional leadership support. There are some things that are going well in that regard. But there's definitely, I think, kind of a need for the policy piece that's kind of sticking out here. Funding is a mishmash of colors because in some ways, I think there is ways that funding programs are going or have been identified as going well, but also very much identified as the fact that there's not enough funding. We need more funding. We need more funding to be more efficient. And then also we have this critical need for maintenance funding and existing. How do we maintain our existing facilities? So funding, what is OBPAC's role, I think, here in terms of how you are all, not we, you, prioritizing the funding piece. And direct connection with OTC is something that is not going well. Active conversation and mutual support sounds like that is something that could be enhanced. And then network development and advocacy. I think kind of again here, there's sort of a mix of things. I did want to ask, just because we are going to be using this to do some prioritization after the fact with Leanne. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Someone added about, just okay that I may ask, networking with stakeholders one-on-one as something that's going well. Did I read that correctly? One-on-one.
Mine?
I think it's
One-on-one.
1.1.
No, that was just
1.1.
the section.
Sorry. Okay, thanks. Development and advocacy, what's not going well. I think this kind of relates back to what you're seeing over here. There's not enough advocacy work being done, network development and advocacy. There's more work to be done in some of those categories. Advocating for more bike funding projects, connecting back here. OBPAC and scenic bikeways have been mostly inactive. And again, like this sort of need for additional staff to really kind of accomplish what it is that you have laid out in your plan.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and we'll coalesce these notes. We'll do it. I'll do my initial take on high impact versus high effort, and bring that to our co-chairs meeting. And we'll figure out what to do then, how to share it with staff, and how to continue this discussion at the next meeting. Really wanting to just reiterate the fact too that like additional staff support might not be something that we can provide at this point in time, and so we can do a analysis, or that can be part of the analysis as a group of just like what staff is currently doing in our roles in pedestrian and bicycling, and how that can align with OBPAC, so it's not like a separate item. Like I think like that's sort of would be the way forward for working for like aligning some things that staff are working on with what OBPAC is working, would be the best way to engage staff in the work at this point in time. And that brings us exactly to where we are right now, which is our agenda bill. Oh yeah, which would be what we have on the agenda. Oregon community paths, updates, Great Streets updates. There's some changes coming in the Oregon community paths program that I want to provide. And then we can work on work plan adoption, which would be narrowing in, assigning tasks, and adopting the updated work plan. Fantastic. Do we have anything else that we need to add to our agenda bill while we are at it?
They have a question that could.
Okay.
So we meet every other month.
Hmm.
Is that something that the committee decided? Is that something? It seems like I've been in 3 meetings, I think, and in every meeting it's like, well, we'd like to do this in the next meeting, but we really don't have time. Is there a reason we don't? Is it committee time, or is it staff time, or is it something else?
Statutorily, we need to meet quarterly. And I think that it does have to do with how much it does take a lot of staff time to run a committee. So I think it does have to do, for sure has to do with staff capacity, but also we're legislated to meet 4 times, and we're kind of already meeting 4 times in that that, so I think that like subcommittees could potentially spring off and meet more often. It'd be hard to meet together as a full committee. I'm definitely open to, we could potentially lengthen the times that we do meet, we could stay a little bit longer perhaps, or something like that, like.
Just seems like it creates a roadblock because there's things that maybe don't take a lot of time but need to be done and they can't be done because there's not enough time in the meeting. So maybe if the meeting was longer, we'd get more things done. I don't. But it was just a question. I've been here long
Yeah.
enough to know.
Great question. Well, me personally, and yourself, I travel a long ways to be here and I want to be here all day and I want to take care of business. I am, 4-hour meetings are not really. We're traveling 6 hours each way, 4 hours is not really big to me.
Oh, but we're usually on Zoom, so.
And Zoom, 4 hours is a long time. Yes, so like it's like.
Well, right, but doing it another additional time isn't that hard either.
So, and then the bill, anybody?
I know there was a comment at the beginning of the meeting about Bike Town. Wanted to explore interest in that with our,
I know nothing about Bike Town. Please tell
so
me.
maybe you'd like to learn something, perhaps.
I would like to add, feedback on that Bike Town is one private company.
Totally.
I would like to hear from a few private companies, or at least give them the opportunity.
I think we're going into the weeds with this one. I think we
Okay.
need to make sure that's gonna line up with our new focus areas.
Good point.
I'd also suggest that I'm not aware of an ODOT role there, so I'm not sure what the recommendation to ODOT would be to participate in open bike town operations.
Is it PBOT or PDOT? Yeah.
It came up as part of a public comment, yes, with the, but yes, I don't know what role.
Maybe bike share in general.
Perhaps that, yeah.
That we do have a role.
Great.
Perfect, there we go.
Yes, and I think the future of, if I may, like, what is the future of bike share programs in the state? Funding wise, how does that intersect with this committee's work?
I think that we're lovely to hear about that. Great, nice job. Okay, do we have anything else? Because we're once again filling our agenda. We should have some time for recruitment because I think we'll have some an update at that point on.
In March, yeah.
Yeah.
Update. One more thing, Dave, did you want to talk about meeting time, length, content, anything like that?
I think it's food for thought and we should talk about it this afternoon.
This afternoon.
Okay, anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
You may.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Awesome. Those in favor? Good. Those opposed? We are adjourned. Everybody has 5 minutes before we're supposed to be back here to learn all about equity guidance. We're on the agenda, we're actually at start time, so can we double check with Lisa? Can we start in 5 minutes, Lisa? Okay. Thank you.
We all got violated the brainstorm.
Oh, no worries.
I like your idea.